Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to this morning session of the Carnegie Europe Sciences Po conference about Iraq and the Gulf towards collective security. So our panel now is about Iraq and Europe. And a few months ago when I met Professor Keppel with this concept of a conference about Iraq, and we discussed the concept, I almost felt like I was plotting something secret, because Iraq is still nowadays a rather toxic issue, especially in Europe. And that shows us how a gap there is between the level and the scope of the challenges in Iraq and the I would say low profile, low intensity thinking and engagement in Europe on the issue of Iraq. So this conference is very much about correcting this gap. And to do that, we actually have three excellent speakers and one commentator. Just before introducing them and giving them the floor, I think to use a shortcut, Europe was torn by the Iraq issue in 2003. And now the real question is, can Europe come together on Iraq post-surge or Iraq post-2003? So far, the signs are not that encouraging. Iraq is still treated as a kind of 2003 conflict or post-conflict issue, and not so much as a long-term partner for energy as well as security cooperation in the Gulf. So that's the kind of broad question I would like to put before our speakers today. And as I mentioned, we have three very interesting speakers coming from different backgrounds and bringing different perspectives. We have Monsieur le Sénateur Jean-Francois-Poncert, who is Senator at the French Senate and Vice President of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense and Army. Monsieur le Sénateur was also Foreign Minister under the presidency of Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. And we were discussing earlier during the coffee break, you recently traveled to Iraq yourself, both Baghdad and the north. So you have a direct eye experience of the situation there, and it would be extremely interesting to hear your views about what you think France is thinking about Iraq today, but also Iraq in the future. Then I will turn to Mr. Clemens Sempner, if I say it rightly, who is the head of the Iraq unit at the German Federal Foreign Office. So you are Monsieur Iraq in Berlin. It must be a tough job. And you were before, if I'm correct, posted both in Kosovo, Ankara, and Athens. So, and then we will turn to Mr. Romaric Roignan, who is the Vice President for International Relations at French energy company Total. Thank you very much for being with us today. And then I will turn to Mr. Vladimir Janasek, who is from the European Commission RELEX, Directorate General, covering Iran, Iraq, and GCC and Yemen. So you have a kind of very broad portfolio, and you will be bringing, on your personal capacity, some insights about what's the state of the Iraq file at the European Commission and what could Brussels do on the longer term. So let me now turn to Monsieur le Sénateur and again ask you what you think, where does Iraq stand now in the kind of French strategic thinking? President Sarkozy visited Iraq. It was a historic visit. He also inaugurated a military base in the Gulf. So there is a willingness in the leadership in France to change, to turn the page, to change the view on Iraq. But has it really translated into policy reality and into a long-term partnership? You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I think you rightly said that Iraq has divided the Europeans as few other issues have in the recent past. The American intervention in 2003 was opposed by France and Germany in a very firm way, and you may remember that it led to what I think was the worst Franco-American crisis since the end of World War II. It was a very, very painful moment in Franco-American relations. Why did we oppose it? Well, basically because our feeling was not that Saddam Hussein had to be defended. We of course, subscribed to the very stern judgments passed on one of the worst dictators of recent times. But we believe, and that belief has not changed, that the time when Western nations could intervene in the political life of Mid-Eastern countries was gone by. I mean, that it's no longer feasible, and we believe that it would reinforce the Islamic extremism, which was already to be seen in the Middle East. Now, I must say that what happened after the American intervention, due in part to the intervention and in part to the big political and strategic mistakes made in the first year of the American administration by the American administrator, Brennan, of course justified our restrictions and reserves. Now, the situation has radically changed. And I think it is, of course, logic that this brings with it a change in our policy. President Sarkozy's visit to Baghdad not long ago, about 3 months ago, testified that this change is coming. Has it yet come? Well, I think it probably will take a little more time. Why? Because I think the feeling is that the acid test of Iraq's stabilization is only coming now. Will the security situation, which has greatly improved, dramatically improved, will that survive once the American troops withdraw? They are now, while we're speaking, leaving the towns, as was scheduled. Well, we will see what happens. As you've probably noticed, there is a new wave of violence and suicide attacks. That may just be a passing tension. Globally, the situation from the security standpoint has greatly improved, even since the beginning of the year. But the test comes now. And since the President of the United States has restated that the American troops will have all left by the end of 2011, this is going to be 18 months where many people will hold their breath. So I think before there is a full-fledged engagement, we will probably be waiting for more proofs of the stabilization. What about the political stabilization? While I was there, I was struck by the strength of the Iraqi Prime Minister, Maliki. As you may know, he was selected because he looked like a very weak person. He turned out to be a strong leader. And there are many people in the political life in Iraq who thinks he's too strong. Elections are coming at the end of the year. There were already provincial elections, which Maliki, to a large extent, won. Will that be true also? Governments in Iraq are coalition governments. Will he find a majority? Is, I think, a question. We met people who said anyone except Maliki. So I still have another question mark. Civil security is one, political stability is a second. And then, of course, there is a third issue, which we've all had in mind. Will the unity of the country hold? For the time being, it has. And the greatest threat to that unity probably comes today from the Kurds. And we met with the Barzani, who's the head of the Kurdish Independence Party. And he was very bitter about Maliki. And he requests the enforcement of Article 140 of the Iraqi Constitution, which says there has to be a referendum. But before that referendum is held, he wants what he calls a normalization of the demographic situation, because as you probably know, Saddam Hussein brought a lot of Arabs into regions previously populated by Kurds. He wants those Arabs out, the Kurds back in before there is a referendum. So, his territorial ambitions are large. And I don't think there is any way in which he can satisfy them. So there is a growing tension between the Kurds and the central government. So that's the third question mark. So yes, the situation in Iraq has dramatically improved, but the test is still coming of whether that stabilization will hold. On the other hand, everyone knows that Iraq is a potentially very rich country because of its oil reserves. I think the second oil reserves in the world after Saudi Arabia. It's producing today 2.2 million or 3 barrels a day. It has as its objective to produce 6 million. But before that can happen, there are huge investments. I was told about $60 billion worth of investment. The same amount of investment is needed to bring the civilian infrastructure more or less to the state, which was the case with Saddam Hussein. Electricity and water are not readily available everywhere, nor by a long shot. So much is to be done. The potential riches are there. In fact, the Iraqi budget is a rather comfortable budget. They're not living off subsidies coming from the US or elsewhere, but not large enough to be able to finance those huge investments. So here are the question marks. We have turned the page. And no question about that. We've turned the page. Before there is an all-out French and I would say European undertaking, it's going to take still some time before we have a better idea of where Iraq is headed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monsieur le Sénateur. If I may press you on one point, your last point about Europe could come together, but we have to wait for things to clarify with regards to Iraq. But what type of things need to happen in Europe to get a more coherent and ambitious policy towards Iraq? Because surely a strategy towards Iraq is not only dependent on the situation on the ground, it's also dependent on the political context in Europe. So what do you need in the European capitals as well as in Brussels to formulate a policy that is longer term, that is more multidimensional, including energy, including security, as of starting now?
Well, we need a European foreign policy. And that is non-existent. I mean, let's be frank. What may be changing is what's going to happen as a result of the Lisbon Treaty, which is going to substantially change the setup of the European institution, especially in the foreign relations field. We will have a foreign minister. He won't be called foreign minister. He still will keep his title of high representative because the British couldn't live with the title of foreign minister. And he will have at the same time, he will be vice president of the European Commission. So he's going to be a very powerful person. And we will have a permanent full-time president of the European Council. He too will probably be the international figurehead of the European Union. So things could change, and that doesn't have much to do with Iraq, but it would facilitate the development of a full-fledged integrated Iraqi policy. And my guess is that Iraq would probably be rather high on the European agenda. And the reason is, of course, basically the strategic situation of Iraq and its relations with Iran, which is going to be one of our headaches, especially the U.S. headache, but the Western headache in the months to come, and because of the oil riches of Iraq. Period. So I think we need the capacity of Europe to develop a foreign government policy. I think the interest is going to be there.
Thank you very much. And I will add, if I may, that we need institutions, but we also need political will coming from the European capitals to make those institutions in Brussels relevant and to have an impact. Let me now turn to Clemens, who is going to tell us if Germany, like France, has turned the page but not yet written the new one. Thank you. 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have turned the page, or we've opened a new chapter, but let me first say that in the time that I have been dealing now with Iraq, can you listen? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The time that I have been dealing with Iraq in the foreign ministry, and the discussions I followed with our colleagues in Brussels and the European Union, I have not met a single situation where I felt that the old divisions that were there broke open. We have on Iraq, I think we do have a common denominator as Europeans. There's the common interest of a stable, territorially integral, constructively acting Iraq, and all our thoughts go to how we can support this. There's no division on this. And dear colleague Vladimir, later on can explain that we also have the tools which we want to use with Iraq. That is a partnership and cooperation agreement. There's an energy MOU which we're negotiating with Iraq. I mean, all these aspects we're focusing on. Regarding the German perspective, let me put that maybe in a framework. We have long and friendly relationships. We have around 84,000 Iraqis living in Germany, many of them for many decades. The current ambassador, Mr. Al-Hashimi, has been in Berlin for more than 20 years. We have also an increasing number of Iraqi asylum seekers coming to Germany. This is shows that there's a very strong linkage, and it was no coincidence that we opened very quickly our embassy in Baghdad in May 2003, a few weeks after the toppling of Saddam Hussein, because we do want it to be present there. In the meanwhile, this has developed into a very lively exchange. Last week we had the Iraqi transport minister in Berlin. At the same time, we had the government spokesman, Mr. Al-Dabah, in Berlin visiting as well. We had a number of German members of parliament traveling to Iraq. We will have more Iraqi delegations coming in August and later on in the year. So there's a very vivid exchange, and that reflects on that we've been engaging for quite a while. We have given around 300 million euros in bilateral or multilateral assistance to Iraq through a variety of projects. We have, in the context of the Paris Club, agreed to a debt relief of some 4.7 billion euros, which is 80% of the total debt that Iraq had bilaterally with Germany in this context. And as Vladimir will say, the European Union is also giving an amount close to $1 billion in this context. But the issue is not about money. As Excellency Mr. Francois-Poncert pointed out, Iraq is a potentially rich country with a very well-educated middle class. And the one thing we should avoid as Europeans is entering into a beauty pageant of who is throwing more money at Iraq. This will not be leading to the results that we want. What is much more important, and I can only subscribe to what Mr. Sabah had said yesterday on the panel, we need urgently a better donor coordination and coordinated and sustainable effort that doesn't do short-term projects and then runs away from it. This is also our approach. We try to pick up what Iraqis themselves have identified with us as their most urgent needs, and where we think as Germany we could give an added value that had been mostly in the areas of immediate humanitarian aid with refugees and returnees, but also capacity building. We've done a lot in the training effort. This includes judges, diplomats, engineers, and also in the area of human rights and trying to mend some of the wounds that are there. Small projects would sometimes have a good influence on the situation. Speaking about trauma centers that we have established in Arbil, Suleimania, and Kirkuk to deal with the psychological damage that has been inflicted on the country. This we try to do close cooperation with the United Nations mission there, but also with non-governmental organizations, although this is, especially the non-governmental side in Iraq, is still a very fledgling scene, one must say. In the coming months, we want to put the focus more on strengthening the rule of law, and there the European Union is doing also, I think, a tremendous job. More on economic reintegration, bringing employment and wages back to the people. Where we're talking to UNIDO, doing a pilot project in Nineveh to start micro businesses for people. But the one issue that remains is the security situation, which makes it difficult to go on the ground to implement programs, which makes it difficult to evaluate the success of what we're doing. If the trend continues, if the security situation gets better, if the political stabilization process succeeds, we will be able to do more of that. One area where on a European level where we're doing that is in the common rule of law mission, or just Lex, which has done so far some 90 courses with Iraqis. There have been much more than 1,000 people from the upper echelons of the administration in the area being trained. And we're now entering into pilot phase where we do programs in Iraq. 3 programs have taken place, and there are more to come. Again, this is starting on a small scale, but we're treading towards the right direction, I feel. When Prime Minister al-Maliki visited Berlin in July 2008, he gave a very clear message. He was grateful for what we've done in those kind of training areas, but he said that the main impetus now must be on establishing economic links, getting businesses come to Iraq, help reconstruct the country in order to support the political stabilization. I mean, the logic is very obvious. By bringing employment to people, you get them off the streets. You will leave little nourishing grounds for insurgencies, and we've tried to go in this direction as well. We had our economics minister visit even before that in June 2008. Our foreign minister traveled this February after the provincial elections. And he came with he not only opened a general consulate in Arbil, which reflects simply also the situation there, which means northern Iraq is on its own merit an economic partner and a very rapidly developing area. But he came with a business delegation making specific proposals on areas of cooperation. In infrastructure and healthcare. These were issues we had identified with the Iraqis beforehand, also the energy sector. And we did something which, since there is no basis for normal commercial relations yet to function with Chamber of Commerce, we have set up with a non-governmental organization a service office in Baghdad, which serves as a linkage point for Iraqi businesses and administration and German businesses, simply to find out. As an example, we have German companies which have delivered pumps or materials some 20 years ago, and they don't know how they can reach the company that had originally bought the products. Or the Iraqi side said, we have bought these products and now we need to replace them. Please help us identify where the German company is. Very basic matchmaking, but this is the direction we have to go. We're sponsoring a newly found website simply to give people an impression. What can you do? Interviews with the mayor of cities who tell of the investment possibilities there, because you cannot simply travel there as easily as you want to nowadays. This is leading to some results. The transport minister last week was signing a letter of intention with the Deutsche Bahn to reconstruct the railway system, a huge project which will help link Iraq via Turkey to the rest of Europe and to the south as well. We will be present with a German stand, with a German presentation at the Arbil International Fair, with German companies who already voiced interest to go there. We've seen from a very modest level an increase of 38% in our trade in the first quarter of this year in comparison to last year. This amounts only to 120 million euros, but it's showing the direction in which we're going. That is important, I feel. But I must say again, for companies as well who are getting very curious, the main question, the main issue they raise always is, what can we do in this security environment? And so it's, as long as we don't get out of this vicious cycle, we will reach limitations. I think further progress will depend on political stabilization, on a very relentless fight against corruption, and on, as I had mentioned earlier, better donor coordination, which finds its limit, of course, because when it comes to economic cooperation, we Europeans, we're competitors and not partners. The outstanding legislative issues must be solved, the hydrocarbon law, revenue sharing law, and so forth. These are basic conditions which must be met. But I think we can look at the parliamentary elections in January 2010. If everything goes smoothly until then, and at this event, I think there will be a very clear signal that Iraq may have reached a turning point. And I can only say for the German government, we will stick to Iraq. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clemens. If I may, I would like to push a bit on the point. I think it was very interesting to see the scope of Germany's involvement in Iraq, especially from an economic point of view. But I get the feeling that, and this is also what you hear in other European capitals, that there is a kind of attentist position, which is, we will do more once things improve on the ground. Which is totally fair, because indeed, like in other post-conflict countries like Afghanistan, you do have a security and development conundrum. That means you need to have development, but without security you can't implement this development or this economic investment. I would like to hear from you what you think Germany, but beyond even European countries, could do more, beyond being in this attentist position, and maybe how will, for example, what's Germany's view on where Iraq could be in 10 years? I mean, what's the kind of best scenario you would like to have about Iraq, but especially in the context of the Gulf, because I think that's the relevant context for Iraq.
Yes. Once again, I would say I think what I described shows that we're not leaning back and being attentive and waiting what is happening. But we take small steps, and this is that's the thing you can do at this situation. You should also not forget, if we first of all raise hopes on the Iraqi side, which we cannot fulfill, this will lead to great disappointment. And if we come to the situation where we have pulled in missions, companies, and others working on the ground and being severely damaged, this will throw us back further than if we use the approach that we're doing, carefully working and according to the real situation. When we talk to the Iraqi government, never mind who is approaching us, the most trivial issue that becomes the most paramount issue that they raise, besides the visa issue, it's a question of our travel warning on our website. This is what the Iraqi government, when they speak to us, identify as a concern. Now, our travel warning reflects the actual situation, and we're not standing out. I mean, if you look at our European partners, it's more or less the same wording we're all using, and it would be highly irresponsible to deviate from that, because we have a responsibility for our citizens. But looking at the future, I think you're right, because German foreign policy in the broader area there has always been in favor of thinking about regional security structures. And I think if we succeed bringing Iraq back as a normal, constructive player, then we will have achieved a lot. We have with the neighborhood process, we have a tool which, fairly speaking, has been underused for many reasons. But we should at least stick to this and keep it alive. This may not sound very ambitious, but I think from the wishes also how the Iraqi government wants to engage, this may be still the right approach. I can see that the Iraqis are very much willing to play just this role. First of all, defining their interests and playing a constructive role. That will be already a lot if we achieve this.
Thank you very much. And I guess their neighbors should also play a constructive role, but that's another conversation. Let me now turn to Romaric, who is going to give us the private sector's view. So you're representing the whole of the private sector in Iraq. Now, you are representing Total, a major French company with obviously important interest and potential interest in Iraq. We were joking earlier during the coffee break that the question is whether Total made Iraq or Iraq made Total. So if you could fill us in about how does a typical important energy company view Iraq today, and what do you think Europe should do more in terms of upgrading its strategy so companies like Total can be more relevant and active in Iraq? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much first for giving us
I think you have to put it closer. Yeah.
an opportunity to address this public here. So I thank Sciences Po and Carnegie for inviting us. It is a very important time for us today since there is the awarding of contracts in the frame of bidding rounds which are ongoing right now. So for obvious reasons, I will not make any comments whatsoever on this ongoing process for obvious reasons. Yet, I believe indeed the oil and gas industry is certainly a very good way to address the issue of long-term relations between Europe and Iraq for many reasons, and I will try to make three very brief points, and then maybe we can have a further debate. The first point is that the development of Iraq oil potential is crucial for both Iraq, obviously, and for Europe. The second point will be that this development of the Iraqi potential faces many challenges, which, in our view, European companies can contribute to take up. And then I will try to see what are the conditions for success in fostering partnerships in this field, long-term partnerships. So the development of the Iraqi oil potential is crucial for both Iraq and for Europe. This sounds as an open door, and I'm sorry to make this case today. But we believe that even though oil production has been declining the last year due to the economic crisis, we have the perspective in the 20 years ahead of increased needs in hydrocarbons resources. We expect that in 2030 the oil, gas, and coal will still represent about 75% of the whole energy mix, and that adequate level of supply for the global oil market will be needed when the recovery comes in a few months or years. So both national oil companies and international oil companies have a role to play, a responsibility to bear in bringing these new capacities on the markets when they are needed. In this view, Iraq, alongside with Saudi Arabia, has probably the highest potential for increased production. The reserves of Iraq are around 115 billion barrels, which makes the third largest reserves in the world, with a share of around 10% of the oil reserves worldwide. But as a paradox, the current production of Iraq is around 3% of this world's production. And we should stress that this is actually the Iraqi oil ministry and companies have been achieving miracles to maintain this production at that level under the circumstances they have went through during the last 30 years. But anyway, I think there is a wide consensus within the oil and gas industry that Iraq might reach levels of production around 6 to 8 million barrels a day in the coming years. Now, there is a mutual interest for both Europe and Iraq to develop this oil potential. Obviously, Iraq relies mainly on its oil resources to rebuild the country. I think the oil revenues take a share of around 85 to 95% of the Iraqi budget, depending on the level of oil prices. But also Europe needs the Iraqi oil production to be available on the market to ensure the post-crisis balance between oil demand and supply in the oil market, and also a reasonable and sustainable price for oil to achieve this recovery. So this leads us to how to achieve this this challenge, to develop this potential. As I said, there is obviously a long history of war isolations that explain why the Iraqi potential is still not at its obvious level. There has also been a lot of work since 2003 about reorganizing the oil ministry and the oil sector as a whole, and this has been long and complex process. It's not achieved yet, but we hope it can go on swiftly. But I think the main reason why there has not been so much progress or increase in the production lies maybe in the complex strategy issues that the Iraqis have to solve. They have to decide about. And when you see the debate that occurred last week in the parliament, where a minister of oil was invited for a debate, you see that these issues are really at the core of the reconstruction of the post-Saddam Iraq, and they need further debate probably. There are technical issues. Where should the Iraqis start? Should they develop what they call brownfield or greenfields, which means redevelop fields which are already in production, or concentrate on fields that haven't been developed yet? There is a political issue. We all know about the debate about the right balance to find between the powers and the prerogatives of the central government and the local provinces. And this debate has so far been a big block ahead on the road to the adoption of a new petroleum law, as you know. And then you have a very sensitive issue, which is both technical and political, which is how to deal with the foreign oil companies. And this is also an issue which lays at the heart of the Iraqi identity, I think, which is should we have production sharing contracts, technical service contracts, other type of contracts? Should we have bidding rounds like the one we are having today, or direct negotiations with companies which have already occurred in the recent past? Should we have should we start negotiations from scratch, or should we take into account former negotiations which were led in the past decade? All those questions are, I think, very challenging for the Iraqi authorities. They have led to very deep debate, and they are not yet solved, and they explain why I think there is still a lot to do in the development of the Iraqi oil capacities. Now, what can we do to contribute to solve or to enhance the situation? We believe that the European, French, Total, obviously, companies can contribute indeed decisively. First, and here I made a very conceptual distinction between quantity and quality. First, on the quantity side, obviously, the Iraqi authorities cannot sustain alone the huge investments that will be necessary to rebuild the oil and gas infrastructure of the country. We are speaking of indeed tens of billions of dollars, and we believe that involving foreign companies in the reconstruction of this industry can spare an important part of the burden to the Iraqi government and help him concentrate on more urgent needs of the population, like, as you mentioned a bit earlier, electricity, utilities, hospitals, schools, whatsoever. And then you have also the physical capacity. The Iraqi oil companies, whatever their skills, and which are really unique in the region, I think, cannot take up this challenge alone. On the quality side, well, there is a need for an upgrade in the Iraqi oil industry. It has been cut from the progress of the world oil industry for 30 years, and there is a need for new training, new experiences, new partnerships with other companies, best practices exchanges, and so on. And we can bring such experience. We have some technical know-how which can be applied there. We have a big project management expertise, which will be needed to also include the redevelopment of exporting facilities also. Some of the companies have a knowledge of the country. Total, for instance, as you mentioned, was born in Iraq. It was there until 1972. But we also worked during the 90s on a few fields on which we acquired some experience, some expertise, and we are ready to contribute to their development. And I think it's also an opportunity for the Iraqis to set very high industry standards in the field of corporate and social responsibility, of environmental handling of the projects, and oil majors can bring that. So what are the conditions for success now? Obviously, there is a need for oil companies to adapt to the needs of the Iraqi people and political leaders. I think most of them are ready to do that. What are these needs? I think we are facing a need for transparency, open competition, Iraqi ownership of resources, and broader partnerships, which means indeed local content, access of local communities to education, and so on. The Iraqi leadership ought to address also the company's needs, concerns, which are contractual, legal, economical. Obviously, there is a security issue, and governance. And from the European perspective, the European governments, they can contribute to fostering these partnerships through, I guess, sustained bilateral dialogue, and that's what they have been doing, I think, very consistently lately. And I hope they will go on. Providing incentives for investment, like insurance, investment protection frameworks, more cooperations in the field of education, state capacity building, and also maybe help within the framework of the United Nations Security Council, provide a stable framework for the income recovery of Iraq. So, at the conclusions, I will very briefly say that it is key for both Iraq and Europe that there is a special feature of the oil industry, which is risk. We have tens of billions involved. The reference timeline is decades. So trust between the parties is really of paramount importance. So we need really to find balanced term and an alignment of interest, and this is really at the heart of the issue. We believe Iraq has a bright future. Obviously, it has been gifted with great human resources and also the third largest oil reserves, and we stand ready to help developing them.
Thank you very much, Romaric. I will certainly press you on some points you raised. And before we turn to the European Commission, since Monsieur Senator has to leave at 12 on the dot, I thought we could open the debate and take some questions that the audience may have towards Monsieur Jean-Francois-Poncert. So if you want to, yes, raise your hands and do as usual, introduce yourself. Yes, the gentleman there. I think you have to switch on the... It's not censorship, huh? It's just technical fault.
Saifuddin Abdurrahman. Senator, thank you for your presentation. I've got two quick questions, if you don't mind. The first question I have is, what can Iraq further do to encourage European engagement in Iraq, particularly now that the structure of the relationship with the United States is changing. I see a window of opportunity for Iraq-European engagement. The second question I have is, should Iraq, and this is something that we sometimes get lost in the Iraqi government, should Iraq be focusing on Brussels, or should Iraq be focusing on the different European capitals? Because we hear many different things from our different European friends. So it would be nice to hear an answer from the senator first, of course, and the panel also. Thank you.
Is there, or are there one or two more questions maybe, or we take this one? Okay, Mr. Senator.
Well, I'm going to be extremely brief. What Iraq has to do is to succeed. Period. Now that's a very, very short answer. Under that heading, a lot of things come. But as I said before, I think the acid test of the success is happening now. So we'll see. I don't think you will see very significant engagement before the Europeans are more reassured that the Iraqi stabilization is a success. Now, should Iraq knock at the door in Brussels or in the various countries? Answer is also very, very short. Both. Why? Well, for the reason I said before, because we do not yet have a truly common foreign policy. But the European Commission has extensive money and has an active development policy. So there is much Brussels can do. And there is much the various nations want to do bilaterally. So I think both, as in many, many other cases, both are necessary. And I think both will be forthcoming if the situation, the improvement in the situation is confirmed.
There's a question there, but how do you define a successful Iraq? Because you've set the benchmark, but when will you consider it successful?
Well, I think we have to wait for two, maybe three things to happen. First of all, will the security situation continue to improve, or will it not deteriorate after the U.S. has pulled its troops out of Iraq? That's the main question. Secondly, elections are coming up in December or January of next year. Legislative elections. As you know, Iraq has a parliamentary system. The Prime Minister has to have a parliamentary majority. Will Maliki be reinstated, or could we see an era of instability develop in Iraq? At least that's a question I have in mind. And the third question is, how do we satisfy the Kurds? Of course, in the case of the Kurds, we have in a way what I would say there is a Turkish factor that is important. And the Kurds, of course, know they can quarrel with Baghdad, but they also know very clearly that there are red lines which the Turks will not allow them to cross. The big issue there is Kirkuk. Where will Kirkuk go? The Kurds want Kirkuk to be Kurdish, not Mosul, but Kirkuk. And they're adamant on that. Mr. Barzani spoke to me for a whole hour on Kirkuk. So that's a major issue. How that will be solved, how Baghdad will negotiate its way with the Kurds, I don't know, because I think the Kurds, as we say, I don't know whether there is an English word for that, they throw the stone a little further than they really want to go. So it's sort of a poker game. There are the three tests, and I think they will come up very quickly. I would say in 18 months, we will more or less know.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. We take one more question, if you allow us. The gentleman with the blue shirt, yes.
Stephen Ekovich, the American University of Paris. The senator is very knowledgeable about Iran, knowledge that has been accumulated over a very long and distinguished career. And I can't help asking him, it anticipates this afternoon, but since the senator will not be here, what he thinks about the changes in Iran and how those will influence Iraq.
Thank you.
Well, there are really two questions in your question is where is Iran going? Well, that's I don't know, it's a $64 question. I don't know whether that still exists in the States. It's a very tricky thing. Obviously, what has happened since the election has changed the game, probably in a permanent way. Not to the point where there is a real Iranian instability. The pillars of strength that are now military are solid and solid in the hands of the guide, Ayatollah Khamenei and Ahmadinejad. So I don't think the regime is threatened, really threatened. Yet something has broken and probably cannot be repaired. What impact will Iran have on the evolution of the situation in Iraq? It is an actor, it's a player in Iraq, as you would expect. An important player that has at times helped to stabilize Iraq and at times made the situation worse. And as you may know, one of the provinces that is still insecure is a province that is neighbors Iran. So it's once a hand in Iraqi policy, but it knows it cannot go very far. And then you have to look at the Iraqi side of the equation. And I asked that question, of course, to everyone I met. What about Iran tomorrow? And the answer is they're good friends, they're relatives, but they won't call the shots. Iraq is going to be an independent country. And of course there you hit another border, historic border, that has not disappeared, in spite of the religious factor, which is Iranians are Persians and the other ones are Arabs. And there is a return of Iraq into the fold of the Arab nations. When I was there, I couldn't meet Maliki because he was at the Doha summit or some summit that was taking place at that time. So they are an Arab country. For the time being, the Arabs have been very cautious, especially Saudi Arabia. the king, up to now, has not really trusted Maliki. But that will change if he remains in office. So I think the answer is what I heard. Yes, Iran will be a player, but not the player, not the one who pulls the strings.
On these words, if you could join me and thank Monsieur Senator for his time.
I'm not sure I deserve thanks.
Goodbye. And we still have a bit less than 30 minutes to go. And I'm going to turn to the European Commission because the European Commission was not going to get away with it. So we have to put a bit the scrutiny on what the Commission is doing. We had this question about where to knock in Europe, on Brussels or on European capitals doors. And as we know, it's on both. But looking at the fact memo about the European Commission's involvement in Iraq, it's interesting to see that almost the entire share of its budget, which is around 100 million euro per year, if I'm correct, is dedicated to assistance and aid. And there is, as I can see, for RELEX, which is the External Relations Directorate of the Commission, only 1.5 million euro a year, which is mostly for rule of law. So I was told that it's because the rule of law dossier is also paid for by the European capitals, but I just would like to understand a bit more what is the European Commission's involvement and what are the priorities and where do you see its role in the future? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. I'm Vladimir Janacek from the European Commission. I work in DG RELEX and I'm the Iraq desk. And my intention is to summarize what we do with Iraq, where we stand and what are the prospects for the future. And naturally I will I'll speak about the EU relations, but I will obviously focus on the European community side. If I was to summarize what the approach now is, I would probably say that we are moving steadily towards normalization of our relations with Iraq. It is a term that we like to use. I'm aware of the fact that it's not maybe the best word. It has some strange connotations in some countries, including my own, but it's still a term that we like to use. And what it actually means is that it means that we move to regular instruments in terms of signing agreements with a country or programming assistance. What it also can mean is enhancement, basically, or reinforcement of our relations. And I will try to present the four main elements that constitute the basis of this enhancement of our relations. And this is presence on the ground since 2005, the partnership and cooperation agreement that Clemens already mentioned a few minutes ago, assistance that was also mentioned here, and I will also speak a little bit about our support to international initiatives that would lead to Iraq's integration into the international system and world economy. But before speaking about these four elements, I would maybe like to say how we got actually here to this stage of normalization. As it has been said here, Iraq divided Europe, and it was not easy to find a common language. The EU had the chance to test most of its foreign policy or external action instruments. Some of these worked well, some of these didn't really work well, like the CFSP. However, in 2004, I think what helped us was the UN Security Council Resolution 1546, which dealt with the transfer of authority to Iraq. And this more or less corresponds to the time when the European Commission adopted its communication that is called EU and Iraq Framework for Engagement, which set out the main framework and presented the main objectives or priorities. And these are to develop secure, stable and democratic Iraq with a parliament and government elected on basis of constitution, open, stable, sustainable and diversified economy, and Iraq's economic and political integration into its region and the international system. Now, I would argue that these objectives still remain valid and are more or less the basis of what we still do. The communication was actually updated in 2006. There was another communication which was adopted in times when the situation deteriorated, so it presented critical factors which are inclusiveness of the political process and the security situation, which are two critical factors which still remain valid, and I think it has been discussed here sufficiently, so I do not really need to speak about that too long. So I'm saying this because it still actually constitutes the framework for our thinking, or it's basically the paradigm that we use. So now let me move to the four elements that I mentioned in the introduction. Presence on the ground. So since 2005, actually, the European Commission is present in Baghdad. We opened a delegation. Since 2006, Ambassador Ilka Usitalo is posted there. We moved there actually from Amman. We still have a few people in Amman, basically dealing with assistance. But obviously, the intention is to gradually move the whole delegation staff to Baghdad. Now we have about 5 people. With the people in Amman, it would be maybe almost 10 people working on basically all areas, political, economic assistance, and we hope that this would help us engage gradually more and more with the Iraqi authorities. Now the second point is the partnership and cooperation agreement. Here I would like to say we really believe that this is going to be a major step forward, because it's the first time in history that the EU actually would have contractual relations with Iraq. The PCA is negotiated by the Commission. Negotiations were opened in 2006. They are still going on. In May, end of May, we had the 8th round. I think it was a very successful round. We made good progress, and I think now we only have a small number of issues that we need to clarify, and our hope is to conclude negotiations in the next months. So what it is, it's actually a framework agreement. It's quite a substantive agreement which covers all spheres: political, trade part, cooperation policies, justice and home affairs policies. Importantly, it includes political dialogue, cooperation in CFSP matters. By this, we hope to follow up what actually was already launched. When I'm speaking about political dialogue, it's not the first time we will have political dialogue. The first, or importantly, what I could mention is the EU-Iraq Joint Declaration on Political Dialogue that was signed in 2005, where both sides agreed to meet regularly and discuss. As a matter of example, in also end of May there was a political dialogue at the level of political directors meeting in Brussels under the Czech presidency, and we hope that this political dialogue will continue and will be regularized in the PCA. So another part of the PCA is trade. Obviously, this is a core of the agreement. Interestingly, actually, the PCA started as a TCA, which stands for Trade and Cooperation Agreement. However, as the negotiations went quite well, both sides agreed to rename it Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, which basically is a sort of upgrade of the agreement. So I think it shows that there is a common interest on both sides. There is a part on cooperation policies, many policies that, including energy, that was discussed here. Justice and home affairs is also an important part of that agreement. So I think what we hope is that this will lay down a solid basis for our relations. We also hope that this will, especially through the trade part, we hope that this PCA will support Iraq's integration into world economy. maybe we can also hope that it will stimulate further reform in Iraq. Now I would move to the third point, which is assistance. This was also discussed here. This is clearly a key part, a key element that the Commission is very much involved in. And the assistance which is programmed in our DG RELEX and is implemented by our colleagues in DG EDCO, which stands for Aid Cooperation. Now I would like to start by saying that since 2003 the European Commission provided almost 1 billion euros, which is not little money. Now, obviously, from 2003 till 2007, partly 8, most of this money was implemented through IRFI, which is the fund facility. Now, 2008 was the first year when we actually signed a framework agreement, and when the projects were, or the money was channeled through bilateral channels. And this is something that we will follow. As you know, the IRFI is going to be phased out, and the major donors are all going to go for these bilateral channels. We are no exception. And we are preparing a programming note for 2009 and 10, which is soon going to be adopted. We would like to follow with a strategy. It's called the country strategy paper, which is quite an important document that we will be drafting now. I can maybe mention here as well that we will go to Iraq. We will launch our discussion and analysis, identification of the main priorities. We will be launching this very soon. We will be going to Iraq to speak to our partners there, probably in October. And the intention is to speak to the partners and see how they see the main priorities, so that we can discuss, and this would be the basis for our analysis, which would be a part of the country strategy paper. And we will we hope that this will be actually a major step forward, because it's, as I said at the beginning, this is a regular instrument that we use for other countries, and for the first time we will use this instrument for Iraq. Now, our focus has been on basic services, democratization, election. Okay. I understand that I need to be short, so I will maybe focus on the future. So I think, as has been said here, we will also focus on institution building, because this is clearly something that we feel that we can contribute. As all others, we feel that Iraq is potentially rich, so we would like to focus on something where we can really have an added value, and we believe that this is institution building. This concerns rule of law, democratization, etc., etc. And the last point would be support to international initiatives. Very shortly, because I have to be very short, support very much UNAMI and the work of Mr. de Mistura. We supported very much the neighborhood process, even though we understood recently that maybe Iraq prefers to go bilaterally. We also supported very much the compact. As you know, Sweden was hosting the review conference. Also very much would support the WTO accession. We are planning support even for Iraqi authorities and senior officials. This is in line with our assistance priorities. And obviously the IRFI and assistance, I think now we will have to find a post-IRFI mechanism for coordination, and the European Commission is certainly going to play a very important role in this. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. We have just a bit more than 10 minutes for questions. So let's take the questions from the floor. Sefaldin, has your Brussels question been answered?
That's why I'm a follow-up, actually.
Okay.
I want to just start with something I couldn't say when the senator was here, and I object to a statement that he said that if the present prime minister, does not stay in his position, that's instability. That's what democracy is all about. I mean, I think we need to depend on elections, and when the prime minister of France, for example, or the prime minister or the chancellor of Germany changes, it doesn't necessarily mean instability in the country. So changing of a prime minister, hopefully, that's why we talk about institutions and institutional development of a state. So that's just a comment that I wanted to...
Yes, but what are the safeguards to reassure your international partners that indeed, if there is a transition which is perfectly healthy in a democracy, you will not have a collapse of a system that is still very fragile?
Well, we've had three transitions, three democratic transitions since 2003. You had a transition from Ayad Allawi to Ja'fari. You had a transition from Ja'fari to the present prime minister, and they went pretty smoothly. I think the state institutions are there that enough that we can have another successful transition once a new government is sitting post-election. I just want to emphasize that that's the idea of having elections, so that you can have a prime minister with a majority and with the government behind him, or with a parliament behind him that will support the program. And we should not tie it to individuals as much as we should tie it to the concept of institutions. That's just a comment that I want to make. But I want to ask Romaric regarding the energy majors and companies generally. Is what do you see as the major obstacles on the Iraqi side in foreign companies, particularly coming into Iraq on investment issues and things like that? In London, for example, people were saying that the problem was ownership of property, and that was fixed in the investment law. What more, or what are the obstacles that you're seeing from a private sector standpoint to being involved? And I want to just repeat the question again on the engagement of Europe. And I think it's too easy to just say we will wait to see Iraq succeed, because that's not really engagement. That's you're basically waiting for the outcome, and by then it's too late. What would you say would be necessary for Iraq to do to better see European engagement during this coming period, and where should Iraq be focusing, Brussels or the individual capitals? Thank you.
So we have two questions here, one to the energy major and one to our European speakers. But let me take two more questions. We have Marina at the front, and then the gentleman in the middle, and then the gentleman next to Saif al-Din.
We have heard very good descriptions of plans for engaging within Iraq as we would like it to be at some point in the future, when we are sure that the situation has stabilized and so on. We have not heard anything about engagement with Iraq as it is now. And I think that's where we have this wait, we are going to wait. But is there, an interim phase here where more engagement, it really goes to the point that Saif was making. What do you do to get to that point?
Thank you, Marina. I wanted to ask this question, so that's great that you did ask it. The gentleman in the middle with the white shirt. And then...
Shwan Rafa from INALCO. Such as we know, there's many European company and Asian company. They are now actually in Kurdish region. But I want just to have a simple question for what kind of political dialogue that EU can have with KRG. Because yesterday we hear that KRG, it's important for the security in the Iraq, and now Mr. Senator said the same idea. So I want just to know if EU have a project with KRG. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question, yes, the gentleman with the blue tie.
Ahmed Shikaki from Geneva. As we heard that the Europe turned the page, and now the old Europe have ready to participate to repair what was broken in Iraq. But now in the morning we heard from Mr. Crocker that Iraq need Europeans and international community to stabilize and develop and reconstruct Iraq. At the same time, we heard from the senator that they ask for some conditions or a level of success that Europe to be engaged after that. I think now this is a closed circle. What we can do, we will participate, we will help Iraq, or we will wait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we start with you, Vladimir, and then Romaric, and then we will close with Clemens? Vladimir, if you want to take on some of the questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I forgot to mention 2 minutes because we're getting short on time. Thank you.
So shall I answer the question on Brussels or member states? Or
yes, and the wait and see question.
Okay. Well, the Brussels or member states, I think that's an eternal question. I think it's not only Iraq that asks the same thing, but I think you have to focus on both, in my view. You have to speak to Brussels. You have to understand the complex, actually, character of the EU. The EU is a certain body. It's not very clear. It's a very unprecedented project. It doesn't have legal personality. It has some key players. It has the Commission. It has member states. So I think you cannot really focus on only one leg or one pillar of this, but you have to speak to the Commission and you have to speak to the member states. I think that's the only way forward. Maybe as Senator Poncet rightly pointed out, this may change after the Lisbon Treaty is adopted. We may have President of the EU, we may have Foreign Minister of the EU, so maybe later it will be clearer, I think, to everybody in the world, including us, actually. Now, maybe the second question that I noticed here about engagement now, when this has to do with wait and see. I think we are not really waiting to see what's happening. We are, as I tried to convince you, we are actually very much engaged, and we are gradually more and more engaged, and we hope to be even more engaged. And after we sign the PCA, we will be even more engaged, because we will have contractual relations with Iraq, and we will have political dialogue, and we will have a very clear framework for trade and for commercial ties, and we will have a very clear framework for other cooperation policies. So I think we are not really waiting. What I was saying is that there are certain critical factors which have been identified, for instance, in the communication of the Commission, which are obviously security and the inclusiveness of the political process. But this is does not really mean that we wait to see. It means that everybody is aware of this and is still an important challenge, and will be an important challenge. This has been discussed here, and I think you know that this still is a challenge, but doesn't really mean that we are waiting to see. Also on assistance, we are very much involved, and even though our funds will decrease, but obviously this has to be seen in the perspective of the evolution of the situation. I mean, Iraq needed more funds in 2003, 4, 5, 6. It will need less funds now. Our intention is to focus the assistance on intelligent areas, and as I said, we would like to focus on capacity building. So I think there is no wait and see.
Thank you very much. Romaric, there was a question about the energy majors and what do they need from the Iraqi government, and what are the obstacles?
Yes, well, I thank you for this question, because it's really at the heart of the subject. A way to answer to it is that to recall that Total is today participating in the bidding round, which means we participate. We are ready to enter in business with the Iraqi government. It also puts me in an uncomfortable position to comment on that, because, as I said earlier, I don't want to comment on this ongoing process. Yet, if I can try to answer broadly, we believe, we understand that the Iraqi authorities are fairly understanding the usefulness of involving foreign companies in the redevelopment of the Iraqi oil and gas sector. We also understand that this is a very sensitive issue within the Iraqi public opinion and within the Iraqi political personnel. And this obviously leads to compromises, to discussions, ongoing discussions within the Iraqi system. And definitely the adoption of oil law would help creating a better climate. And then I would like also to recall also for the record that the security issue will have to be managed and monitored very closely in order to progress when time arrives.
Thank you, Romaric. Clemens, you will have the closing words.
Thank you. To Saif's point, I think what is very important for the Iraqi side to get Europe more engaged is to clearly identify its own priorities. Very often in context with your government, we find you need help and cooperation on virtually all the levels, but as long as we don't succeed in identifying what is the most urgent priority, it is very difficult for us to transform this into specific actions. So I would say this is definitely one point where you, from your side, could also make it easier for us, for the Europeans. I would just add what Vladimir said. On a bilateral level, Germany is negotiating or has finished negotiating an investment treaty with the Iraqi side. We have so many exchanges. We have so many specific projects that we do where we bring Iraqis to Germany, where we engage in the political process in Iraq. That this is not at all in wait and see attitude. I think the main problem is that because member states and the Commission, they're doing their work, it is not cohesively visible. I think there's much more happening than we were aware of by member states and what the Commission does. Because it is sometimes it is not well advertised, it's not packaged, it is not the great comprehensive vision that we spill out. But we are there, that's very sure. On the KRG issue, I wanted to say all the member states are in a dialogue. We had Mr. Barzani President Barzani in March in Berlin, and we're doing a lot of cooperation with the KRG government. But one thing must be clear: when it comes to a formless dialogue, we're speaking to the Iraqi government, and this is a regional government. So in terms of political dialogue formalized from the European Union or EU member states with the Iraqi side, it is the Iraqi government who is our partner.
Thank you very much, Clemens. Before joining me to thank our speakers, I just wanted to make a short announcement. Lunch is being served now for half an hour, and we have a special session on Iran with our colleague and Iran expert Shahram Shubin. So I hope you can stay for what should be a very interesting session. Thank you very much, and thank you to the speakers.